Terrific. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name's Dominic Saporito from Intern Match, and I'd like to welcome everybody here today. Today, we would like to thank you all for coming along to our Stay Local, Go Far webinar this afternoon. We're excited to be joined by some terrific local leaders of the Bendigo area, and we're going to be discussing all things Bendigo, a wonderful city which I get to visit quite often. But firstly, on behalf of Study Melbourne and Intern Match, I'd like to acknowledge that Bendigo is on Dja Dja Wurrung and Tanarung country. And today we pay our respects to leaders and elders past, present and emerging. We're here today as part of Study Melbourne's Career Catalyst program. This program is all about helping international students develop the skills they need to gain employment and become the future leaders of Victoria and the world. Study Melbourne is indeed a statewide organisation, despite its name, and so I encourage everybody in the state of Victoria to access the wonderful services that they provide to international students who have chosen Victoria as their study state. Although we can't meet in person today, we're going to have a wonderful discussion with a few of the locals from Bendigo and learn a little bit about it. I encourage you to please post any questions in the Q&A area and also to contribute by putting things in the chat, and we'll be having a little activity which I'd like you to put some answers in the chat, which I will talk about shortly. As the fourth largest town in Victoria, or city rather, Bendigo is becoming a very fast-growing business hub and is home to many big businesses such as Bendigo and Adelaide Bank and the ever-growing Bendigo Health. Complemented by incredible tourism and cultural opportunities, we're excited to dive into the awesomeness that is Bendigo today. We're going to introduce our guest speakers now. First one I'd like to introduce you to is Laxman Dua. Laxman is a seasoned risk and security professional with over 28 years of experience in managing cybersecurity risks and is currently the head of cybersecurity at Collaborn Water. He has spent considerable time with Ernst & Young, Westpac Bank and a sovereign fund in the Middle East, developing strategies and frameworks that support achievements of business objectives in a prudent, risk-conscious manner. Laxman, welcome today.
Thank you. Thank you, Dom.
We also have Sonia de Meza, CEO of Loddon Campaspe Multicultural Services, a not-for-profit organisation that supports people from migrant and refugee backgrounds in the Loddon Campaspe region. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly.
You have, Dom.
Campaspe, good. Sonia has a deep passion and purpose for making a positive difference in the world. As an enthusiastic networker, Sonia has worked in many different diverse and challenging contexts, including working on human rights projects in Sudan and Pakistan, resettling refugees in Lebanon for UNHCR. You'll need to explain to me what that is a little bit later, and rescuing child labourers from factories in India. And welcome, Sonia. And we're speaking earlier, and Sonia originally from Naples, I believe, in Italy.
That's
which,
right.
Not far from where I come from.
Yeah.
Terrific. And last but not least, an old friend of mine, Rob Herbert, who is currently the CEO of BE Bendigo. Rob is Bendigo through and through, having studied in Bendigo, and he started his first role with Bendigo and Adelaide Bank in 1989 and stayed with the bank for the next 33 years. He's ingrained in the local community through his work as regional manager and business banking lead. Fast forward now, Rob is the CEO of BE Bendigo, an organisation that supports business to create a vibrant and successful Greater Bendigo. We'll hear more about the wonderful things that BE Bendigo are doing a little bit later on. So welcome, Rob.
Thanks very much, Dom. Thanks, everyone.
Excellent. But before we start, I'd like to play a little game. This is something you can do when you're the host, which is great. This is something that our guests didn't know was going to happen. But I'd also, so what we're going to be doing is I'm going to be asking you a few questions, and I want to see who actually knows the most about Bendigo. And all of you in the webinar can also participate by answering the questions by putting them in the chat. So we'll start with a really easy one. What's the population of Bendigo? Yes, Sonia.
100,000.
Correct. And Rob, I think you were going to say, what about the Bendigo region? It's a little bit more.
Well, I was going to say a tick over 120.
That's right. That's correct. So fourth biggest city in Victoria, 19th biggest city in Australia, and it is Greater Bendigo is 125, roughly, and Bendigo itself is 100,000. Bonus points for who can tell me the suburbs, because Bendigo is so big that we actually have suburbs. So who can tell me the suburbs? You can just yell them out if you like.
Oh, there's millions. Flora Hill, Eagle Hawk,
Okay. Eagle Hawk.
Kennington.
Yep.
Come on, Rob.
Oh, look, Long
California
Gully,
Gully.
Strathdale, Stratford say, Luxman,
Okay.
just jump in. Don't
Let's
wait.
start
Gullies.
from east to west. Lake Havelock, Strathfield, say Kennington, Strathdale, Flora Hill, Quarry Hill,
East
Bendigo.
Bendigo, North Bendigo,
East Bendigo,
California
Epsom.
Gully,
Seriously, any
Iron
international.
Bar.
Flat, Eagle Hawk.
Yep.
Yep.
Sebastian.
Epsom is another one.
The
Jackass
list
Hill.
goes on.
No,
The
was
list
that-
goes on.
Yeah.
So what
Jackass
does
Flat.
this,
Sorry.
yeah. So what,
Jackass Flat.
so what does this say to me? This says to me that if any international student isn't considering Bendigo as a destination for their career and living, they're crazy. Question number 2. How far is Bendigo from Melbourne?
150 Ks.
146.
Yeah,
Okay.
146.
That's correct. 100. Well, I have it here as 147 from Melbourne CBD. What about from Melbourne Airport?
I would have said 130.
Yep, 135. What about from my house?
Oh, that's 263.
No, it's actually I live near the airport, so therefore it's 143.
All right.
And how long does it take to get here by train?
An hour.
About an
No.
hour. Yep,
Yeah, maybe a little
So-
bit longer. Hour 30,
a
hour
little bit
40.
longer. Okay, and what does it cost? Because I've never known that. I've never come up by train.
Well, it's an
About
interesting
50
one.
bucks. Yeah.
As of now, it costs $64, but from 31st March, it's going to cost, Rob, $15 or $9?
$9.20.
$9.20.
And it might be even less on weekends.
Wow. Again, it just shows how close Bendigo is from Melbourne. So you get the best of both worlds. What was Bendigo's original name?
Oh,
Oh,
Tricky one.
Should know that one.
Does anyone know?
I'm going to kick myself.
I can
But
tell you what Bendigo means.
not Sandhurst.
Yes, it
No.
is. It's
oh
Sandhurst.
yeah.
It
Oh,
was
yeah, that's right. It is.
Sandhurst.
Originally Sandhurst. It was changed in 1891 in honour of a local prize fighter who
Fido, yeah, Bendigo.
who compared his own prowess to that of an English boxer known as Bendigo. And so hence that's where the name come from, which
Oh, I
which
thought
was
his
pretty
name
cool.
was Bendigo. Okay.
Yeah, well, he called himself Bendigo, but he named
Oh.
himself after a fighter from England. And it was declared a municipal district in 1855, a shire in 63, and became a city in 1871. What honour did Bendigo hold from years 1880 to 1910?
Were we the main stock exchange?
Bendigo
I
was
think we
the
had the
first-
highest number of gold miners, maybe, or
Yes, very close.
1880
It
when
was
it started. Yeah.
for that 30 years, it was considered the richest city in the world. 700,000 kilograms of gold was discovered just in those 30 years. And yeah, there were 5,500 registered gold mines in the Bendigo gold fields, and there's still quite a number of gold mines operating today. I know Mandalay's one of them. I don't know its official name. What are some of the others that are still operating that that international students could get jobs at, Rob?
Well, the major one is Agnico Eagle, which, look, I
Okay.
should know this too. They're either the second largest or third largest gold mine in the world. So, and in terms of employees, anywhere up to 750 employees, and growing. They're just
and they're not. Yeah, and they're not the biggest employers in the Bendigo area, which we're going to get on
No.
in a minute.
No.
Who can tell me some famous people who come from Bendigo? It's the most famous, other than our friend Chris Stoltz, Bendigo's youngest mayor. Who else is famous out of Bendigo?
Do you want current or past,
I don't know.
or whoever?
Just
Well,
just
currently we've got the deputy premier. That's the local member, Jacinta Allen.
yeah.
And the Speaker of the
Speaker
Assembly.
of the House. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I got a few more. What about Colleen Hewitt? Remember her? Singer, songwriter. I remember having a crush on Colleen as a younger man. Ian Rillan, who was the bass guitarist for Rose Tattoo. Virginia Trioli, ABC and television presenter. And the one that really stands out for me, and maybe the internationals won't quite understand this, but you might see it now. A gentleman by the name of Frank McEnroe invented the Chico roll in Bendigo. And I think that's a very, very famous,
I didn't know that.
famous person. Yeah, so there you go.
I've seen articles, Dom, where that's there's others that have laid claim to that in neighbouring areas. So it's a bit of an interesting one, history sometimes.
It is, but where I found that, they said that the family themselves say it was out of Bendigo. So I'm going to go with that. And it suits what we're doing today. So we'll just stick with that. Who can tell me the number of businesses that are in the Bendigo region that international students can possibly get a job at and should be applying?
Again, rough numbers, around 8,500 businesses. Half of those are sole or home-based micro businesses. So probably somewhere in the region of 4,000 to 4,500 businesses.
Rob, there's no wonder you're the CEO of BE Bendigo, because that is spot on. 8,255 businesses as of 2021, and has a workforce of around 53,533 people. What an amazing place. No wonder international students are flocking to Bendigo in their droves to work there. What are some of the most prominent businesses in Bendigo? What if we just rattle a few of them off? So that the international students can just hear them. And there's going to be a recording of this, so if they need to go back, they can have a look at them. We obviously mentioned Bendigo and Adelaide Bank. What are a few of the others? What about where you're from, Luxman?
So Coliban Water.
Coliban Water?
Yeah. State Trustee's office is in Bendigo as well.
Yes. Rural Finance Corporation, similar.
Yeah.
What about one of the biggest chicken producers in Victoria?
Yep.
Hazeldene's.
Hazeldene's.
Chickens.
And Don KR.
Don KR. So they make Don's small goods and also make many of the Coles and Aldi home brands as well. I went to their factory a couple of months ago. 1,300 people turn up to work there every day. So you can imagine the workforce there.
And Bendigo Health being the biggest, employs in excess of 4,000 staff. And obviously the various education department roles.
La Trobe Uni. And there's a couple of big engineering companies.
Yeah, so Thales.
Thales defense manufacturer.
Yeah, it's significant.
And Hoffman right next door. I think Thales, don't they make the Bushman that they sent off to Ukraine?
The Bushmaster, Yep.
Bushmaster, sorry,
Yep. And also the Hawkeye, which has been a bit had some defects, sort of maintenance requirements as part of that.
And of course, not to forget Forsterville gold mine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep, the gold mine.
Up north there.
So cool. And we'll finish with a couple of quick ones. What Bendigo is known as the what capital of Australia?
Gold, isn't it?
Well, yes, gold. One that we haven't mentioned. Pottery. For those of you who love pottery, Bendigo is your place. The greatest bakery in Bendigo is?
The what was it the other day? Beechworth Bakery.
Yeah. Their curry pie is to die for. It's fantastic. What's an
That's not what
alternative
it's famous for. It's the bee sting. I've learned about the bee sting.
Okay. What's an alternative mode of transport in Bendigo that you won't find anywhere else other than in Melbourne?
Tram.
We got a tram that goes down the middle of the street. Wonderful. And what sport does the Bendigo Lightning play? at the world-class facility just near the Beechworth Bakery.
Bendigo
Field
Lightning.
hockey.
Wow.
The Bendigo Lightning. They play Vic League One, I know, because they play against my son in the men's, and also Vic League One in the women's because they play against my daughter. This is why I make so many trips to Bendigo, because I have to take the kids up and down to play hockey all the time. But a wonderful, wonderful trip. There you go. I reckon we all did pretty well. What do you think?
Yeah.
I think we might make that. We might make that a more regular segment.
That was
excellent.
grueling,
All right. Laxman, tell us about yourself. What's happening in the world of cybersecurity? Surely, with all the software you can buy, cyber's just not an issue anymore. Is that the case?
Cyber is always an issue. When I joined cybersecurity profession 25 years back, or actually 28 years back in '94, we had, I think, less than 10 people having internet connections at home in the city where I started my career in Dubai. And as a corporate, we were on our toes in terms of internet security, cyber security. And 28 years later, we are still on our toes, trying to protect our network, our people, our computers. As we speak, today morning, there were 300,000 people's private data stolen from one of the financial service providers. And not to mention Medibank and Optus cyber heist that we had a couple of months back. So cyber is always, in limelight for wrong reasons.
Yep. And what's the talent pool like in Bendigo for anyone that knows anything about cyber?
Look, cyber is a function that is very difficult to outsource as a managed service. So many IT functions, many accounting function, many process types of functions can be outsourced to small and medium enterprises by big corporates. But cyber is something that a reasonably scaled company wants to keep it in-house. And that's where the shortage of cyber professionals come. So cyber has always been in demand throughout. Over the last 10 years or so, there has been shortage of almost 1 million cybersecurity professional. Everybody, every country, including Australia, UK, US, India, they are collaborating in terms of creating the cybersecurity pool that the world would need in future. There are university courses being created. There are mentoring programs that are being created. So it's in shortage. In Bendigo, it's in shortage. In Australia, it's in shortage. La Trobe actually has a cybersecurity master's and graduate program and a bachelor's program. So that we can actually get students to come to Bendigo, do cybersecurity bachelor's or master's, and then elect Bendigo as a city to build their career in cybersecurity.
Wonderful. And as Rob mentioned earlier, there's about 4,500 companies there that all need to think about their cybersecurity needs and protecting the data of their customers and their staff. And so I think anyone that is doing IT, you could do worse than perhaps choose a career in cybersecurity. Does it pay well, Laxman? I mean, I've heard you drive a nice car, but does it pay well?
I would say so. The fact that I have not changed my profession 28 years, and by the way, by tertiary qualification, I'm a chartered accountant, so I could choose to practice chartered accountancy. The fact that I have not gone back to chartered accountancy since I switched to cybersecurity, that should show that it's paying well.
Okay, and that's interesting because we do always encourage all students to not just stick to what they've studied as their major degree, but to do other things. So perhaps the accountants out there, as a start, should perhaps be looking to do some cyber courses. Would you recommend that?
Absolutely. I think hybrid skills of any combination is great. IT and cyber, accounting and cyber, IT security and audit go hand in hand. So I think anyone who is looking at currently doing accounting, for example, or bachelor's of IT or programming, still can choose cyber as their either as a master's degree or even as a career. And then build their qualifications and education while working in cybersecurity. The good thing is cybersecurity as a starting profession doesn't have a strict requirement of what bachelor's or master's you need to get into cybersecurity.
Yes.
So with any kind of bachelor's degree, with any kind of territory qualification, you can get into cybersecurity and then build your skill as you grow in your profession. So that's a
Wonderful.
big advantage of being in cybersecurity.
Terrific. Thank you for that. And Sonia, can I ask you, with the work that you do, how can you help and what would you recommend international students that they should be doing in order to further their careers, particularly in a place like Bendigo?
I think I really like what Luxman's response was. I think the key is adaptability. And not, I think particularly when you're young and you're just starting out in your career and you're not quite sure what you're good at or what you really like doing. So you could start out studying something, but just having the flexibility to try different things. And what you'll find will happen is that you'll be drawn to careers and to jobs which you're good at, that you're passionate about, that you perform well in. So having an attitude of flexibility. I myself work in the community sector, but my first graduate job was with one of the big 6 private accounting firms in Sydney as an auditor. And that wasn't for me in the long term, but I did that for a year and found that out. So having that flexibility in approach.
Yep. And many of the international students that we see already have some experience, but it's not rated that highly by Australian companies and employers, rightly or wrongly. What advice would you give to international students about promoting the experience that they have from their home country?
Well, firstly, I'd advise them not to despair, because I think when you're first starting out on a career, whether or not you're an international student, it's always a bit challenging and daunting, and you have to build up your confidence. What is really important is that you realise that you actually come to the table with a lot of skills that can be very, very welcomed in the Australian industry, whatever sector you're going into. For example, you might speak another language, and there might be a community of people in this country who speak that language, and you can work and support clients who speak that language, just as one example. You want to build up the skills and experience. And one of the things I often advise students is to do voluntary work in an area that you're interested in, if possible, and see how that works out. So when I was a law student, I volunteered at Manly Local Court as a court officer. And I did that for a couple of years part-time. And that gave me a good taste of what the legal profession was about.
And volunteering, and Rob, you might be able to answer this. Are there many volunteering opportunities in Bendigo?
Well, there's a huge shortage, Dom, in terms of volunteers, and again, Bendigo is probably no different to many other areas. That there's been a significant drop off for various reasons, largely as a result of the COVID environment. That reconnection piece after a couple of years of really disjointed activity have meant that some people have stepped away from volunteering and have yet to reconnect. So look, there's a Bendigo Volunteer Resource Centre here, which is probably, you know, if I was to give some advice, it would be to connect with an organisation like that. I mean, sometimes it's hard to sort of see exactly, you know, who you should connect with, but they're somewhat through the city of Greater Bendigo, and they can point you in the right direction in terms of the types of organisations that are looking for volunteers. So that might be a good starting point, but absolutely there's a shortage of volunteers across the board.
Fantastic. And I dare say that Bendigo would have the usual groups such as Rotary and Rotarac, which is the young person's Rotary. It's between 18 and 30-year-olds. Can you tell us a little bit about that, Rob?
And we also have Zonta, which is very popular.
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, probably more from a Rotary perspective, and I was fortunate enough to present there not long ago, and I've got to say that's a testing environment. They're very there's a lot of very sharp-minded people in the audience, but look, they're no different to any other organisation. Whilst they've been around for such a long time, they've got their challenges of finding new members to participate. So, look, great causes and a really strong network. So, again, I'd encourage anyone listening to reach out to those organisations.
Yep. And
also our organisation has an employment program from people from culturally and linguistically diverse backgrounds who are employed
terrific.
and looking for work. So
Wow,
you could
okay.
also come to us and we can support you free of charge to help you find work. It's a very successful program.
And really for international students, there's two types of work, isn't there? There's the work that you do during your studies, and that is, and it could be hospitality, and really it's to pay the rent so that you can get a bit of spending money and have a really good time. And then there's your work in your field of study. Yep. And and I suppose the uni work is a little bit easier to get. Hospitality, there's no shortage of people, you can get a job there. But what would you say is the best way in order to increase your chances of getting a job in your field of study? What should international students be doing whilst they're studying and living in Bendigo? And I'm thinking along the lines of networking and joining clubs and doing all sorts of things like that.
Well, one of the things I'd suggest, because I've done a lot of travel overseas and I've arrived in countries where I didn't know a soul. And just to get over that initial culture shock, I try and find groups of like-minded people. So Rob mentioned Rotary. I've linked in with my church. I link in with a lot of my favorite sports. And then I find myself networking really quickly with people who like the things I do and making friends quickly. And that helps you to acclimatize to where you are. So that's the first thing, to kind of make those networks and those friendships. And that can make it a lot easier to find work and to settle in, etc.
And look, Bendigo as a business chamber, I mean, we've got for want of a better term, a chapter called Young Professionals Network. And I mean, that's an opportunity for people that want to connect. And we do a little bit like you, Dom. We try and mix a bit of fun with business, but that's very much about learning something, but also connecting to other like-minded people. We would like to think it's an inclusive environment where it's open to anyone who's interested to come along and network and establish new connections, and hopefully in time be opened up to the broader business community so that they can see what the opportunities are across Greater Bendigo.
Yeah.
And at the networking events that you guys go to, would it be fair to say that employers go along hoping to find talent and offer jobs?
Well, look, I mean, it's the constant that's being discussed for the certainly last 12 or 18 months, and we had a listening post yesterday with some of our stakeholders, and that was front and centre. I mean, access to skilled labour, and just maybe going back a couple of questions in terms of if people think, keep an open mind in terms of you're learning what you've learned previously, and don't discount yourself just purely because you mightn't tick each box in a job criteria. I think we've actually got a role going at the moment, and the applicant, the comment from the applicant yesterday is when we asked them about what their career pathway looks like, their response was they've got a hunger for learning and they follow trends. And so, in other words, they're not 100% sure what their pathway looks like in the future, but they're keen to learn and following trends. And I think that's been some of the feedback already, that if you're doing that, then you give yourself a great chance to adapt for the future workforce requirements. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and Laxman, I dare say that in your line of work, if you get someone in the door and they've shown themselves to be someone that can learn and take on new challenges, you never want to lose them. You want to keep upskilling them. Would that be the case?
Absolutely, absolutely. And look, businesses spend considerable amount of time and money on making sure that the people they get, they remain, they grow in the organization, and they actually grow their career within the organization or within the city. But just going back to your previous question, in spite of we starting how big Bendigo is with 100,000 population and 40 suburbs, it's still a very tightly integrated community. So it doesn't matter if you're going, if you look at Bendigo council or various corporations who are holding events, if you're going to that event, even if there are no employers, and if you connect with right people, there will be some reference coming from somewhere for you. So I think because the community is so tightly integrated, and don't forget, Bendigo is the welcoming city. Is one of the welcoming cities in Australia. So I think there's a huge advantage of just going around the town, mixing with people, and you'll be amazed to see how welcoming the community is.
And you've been in Bendigo now, what, a couple of years, Laxman?
2 years as permanent, but I have been visiting Bendigo for last 10 years,
Okay.
almost once every year.
So you speak from first-hand experience. It is a welcoming city.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yep.
So welcoming city is not just a promotion catch line. It is actually a title that Bendigo has earned through competition across Australia, and that's because Bendigo has been adopting. And every employer in Bendigo has been adopting that diversity, cultural diversity kind of mindset to welcome people from across the world into their workforce.
And can I also add to
Yeah.
that? And I know Sonia, your organisation does a great job with regards to cultural programs, and as do our First Nations representatives as well. And I mean, that's a really important piece, and that feedback keeps relaying in my mind around cultural fitness. It's something that I've really, in many respects, only scratched the surface on that, and you need to continue to refresh and update around those cultural awareness pieces, and that's a really strong piece that Bendigo is keen to advocate for. And I know a lot of the businesses already do it, but there's a lot more we can do in that space, and I think all those things will help in terms of that inclusiveness and that welcoming approach.
Fantastic. And Sonia, can I ask you, for any international students that are a little bit shy, but a bit fearful of going to events, what would be some tips on how to approach it and what to do when you get there?
Well, I think just, find out what the events are. There's a lot of events, as Rob said, that are happening in Bendigo, and kind of, really be curious and try different cultures and learn about different cultures, and go there and always sample the delicious food, and just be part of things. Learn, contribute your own culture. We're very welcoming here in Bendigo. We have a lot of cultural festivities, as Rob referred to, and the big one on our calendar every year is the October Zinda Multicultural Festival, and that is a celebration of the diverse cultures of our region, and that is an amazing event. So there's a lot to do. It's a lot of fun. You just got to find out about it. And Bendigo and the council of the city of Greater Bendigo advertises a lot of these events and things.
Yeah, and there's a couple of other places that you can go, and I might get our production crew in the background just to put them in the chat. But meetup.com, you'll find a lot of events there, also Eventbrite. And if you do go to the different associations that are in and around Bendigo, they'll often have the different events that they are holding. And one little mistake that I think that internationals do make is that if you're an accountant, you feel that you need to go to accounting events. It's actually the exact opposite. As Laxman will tell you, every business needs an accountant. Every business needs a cybersecurity person. Every business needs someone to manage their social media and websites. So I would actually encourage people to go to events of industries that you really like. It might be fashion, it might be engineering, it might be sport, I don't know. but to rock along to those events and to be brave, go up to people, say good day. I think people are going to be able to build a network, and you will surprise yourself at how many jobs get delivered to you. Can I ask the three of you, how important is LinkedIn?
Oh, very. Sorry.
Go ahead.
If you want to know anything about me, it's on LinkedIn. Okay, I do an MBA, and most of the students are international students who are half my age. LinkedIn is really important, and it's a great tool because it's not a stagnant document. It is a living tool that you can use to keep building your resume. You do a bit of voluntary work, you put it in. You get involved, you're in the media or something, you put it in. You keep building it, and you keep building your network, and people keep checking that. I've been offered jobs, consultancies, invitations to speak at events, etc. You've got to be there. You've got to be active. And I really believe in LinkedIn. I think it's a great tool, but you have to keep updating it as your life and career progresses.
Yeah. And Rob, I see you nodding there. Do you think that LinkedIn is just as important as your CV?
Oh, absolutely. And fortunately, not that I'm what I'd class an expert, but I sort of got involved in LinkedIn in early days, and I could somewhat see where it was heading. And it's just, again, probably in the last 18 months, 2 years, it's just gone to a whole nother level. What's interesting is some of the social content that sometimes finds its way in there, but largely it's it's the thing I look at numerous times throughout the course of a day just to see what's going on. There's that much information and opportunity that flows through it, so it's critical, I think.
Yeah. And so to all the students that are listening in, if you're not on LinkedIn, get on. Make it look like your resume. Have a lovely photo of just your face. Remember to smile. I know that Rob's got a terrific photo of him smiling away there.
Might have been a selfie, Dom.
It could have been, but it doesn't need to be a professional photo. Don't think that you need one. It just needs to be just of your face, smiling. Make sure it looks like your resume, because in effect, like your resume sits on your hard drive on your computer, whereas your LinkedIn profile is out there working for you 24/7. And so, please get on it and start connecting. But there's with LinkedIn, it's really important to be active on it. I think, Sonia, you were mentioning it's a living and breathing thing. What are some of the things that you do on LinkedIn that means that you are getting offered these jobs and are getting offered consulting gigs?
Okay, I will tell you my secrets, Don.
Good.
First of all, make sure it's up to date. And every time there's something to add, you get another qualification, you do something, put it there. So that's the first step. Second step, I get asked for some reason to talk at a lot of events. And I always go up to someone in the front row or one of my staff members and say, take a photo. And then I do a post and say, oh, this is what I talked about. And it gets reshared and liked. And then you start building up a presence and people start kind of watching you a bit. And then you start getting known as a thought leader in a particular area. It could be in auditing or accounting or IT or whatever. And that's how you build it. And it takes time. But I've been in a restaurant in Sydney where the waitress said, are you Sonia Demetza? And I go, yes. And she'd been following me on LinkedIn. She was a young woman. I was actually a bit shocked. I thought, wow, this is the power of LinkedIn across state borders. So, you've got to make it a living profile or a living story of what you're doing and what you're passionate about. And if there are articles that interest you, share it. And you're teaching people, this is my passion, this is what I'm focused on.
And I think that's the important thing too. I think even if you're not confident enough to post things yourself, to comment on other people's posts or to simply just to like them, you will get yourself known as you build your confidence, and then that way you'll start to come in people's feeds. There's one really important point I would like to say, and I dare say that all of us here would be happy for anyone to connect with us on LinkedIn. Would be happy for that if any of the students.
Absolutely.
So the important thing is that when you do connect with us on LinkedIn is make sure that you send us a personal note. So connect with
Yeah.
us on your computer, not on your mobile phone, because it's a little tricky on your mobile phone. But if you can connect on your computer, once you hit the connect button, once you find us, it will then give you the option to add a note. You don't need to do a message straight away. So you hit connect, then it will prompt you to add a note. And that's where you say something like, "Hi, Dom. Thanks so much for, hosting the Bendigo event. Would love to have a coffee with you next time you're in Bendigo. Regards, James," or Julie, or whatever. And that way I will always have that there forever. And so we can look back at the messages. But by doing that, it gives you an opportunity to really make a deeper connection rather than just sending a connection, because I would get 20 a day, and most of them from people I don't know, and I just ignore them. But anyone that sends me a personal note, I will accept. Yep. And Laxman, I noticed that your LinkedIn, I mean, just before we started speaking today, I quickly jumped on and had a look at your profile. And one thing I was really keen to look at was the people that we know in common. And there's quite a few of them. And I think that is a fantastic little feature that LinkedIn allows you.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm sometimes I'm amazed myself when I connect with someone and then find out that how many people we know in common. Of course, we can talk. We have limited spare time of talking when we meet face to face with people, and so we can't be talking. We can't be talking about all the connections that we have in common. But the fact that we just with one click connection on LinkedIn, we know that we have so many people in common. So that's amazing. That's amazing. And that's probably how I found Sonia on LinkedIn, through a common friend on LinkedIn. I connected with someone, saw Sonia was a friend, and I thought, oh, Sonia is with Multicultural. I'm with Indian Association of Bendigo. Let's connect.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And we do have a lot of students that do come from the subcontinent. I think it's overtaken students from China now. What's some of the work that you're doing, Laxman, as part of that organisation?
Look, sorry, your question was for China?
No, sorry, for your Indian association that you're part of. Tell us what you do and how you might be able to help some of the internationals listening that are from the subcontinent.
Yeah, so interestingly, if I've shared 2 links on the chat, and if Alan or someone can share that with attendees on the panel, on the chat. Indian Association of Bendigo effectively is a not-for-profit, non-political, non-religious association. The whole single purpose of that association is to celebrate cultures.
Mm-hmm.
So we just last week we celebrated something called Festival of Colors, something similar to, of course, on a smaller scale than Zinda festival that we have in October every year. So Holi is Festival of Colors, is a La Trobe sponsored festival, and some of the pictures that you see on Facebook will show you how youngsters from La Trobe, TAFE, and other places in Bendigo are enjoying in that festival. So Indian Association of Bendigo effectively celebrates culture and diversity in Bendigo.
Wonderful.
And that's not related, even though name is Indian Association, we have people from all across different cultures coming into events and gatherings.
And they do a wonderful Holi festival, which is the colour festival. Everyone in Bendigo loves going to it.
Wonderful. Terrific. All right. I'd like to just ask if anyone in the audience did have any questions. There's one that came through to me directly, and I'll pose to each of the 3 of you. Does getting volunteer worker experience in Melbourne or elsewhere still help me in Bendigo?
Absolutely. It's relevant anywhere. Overseas, in Australia, it doesn't have to be, I'll get a job in Melbourne because I've got Melbourne volunteer experience. It's about developing and creating skills.
Yep. Wonderful.
And Dom, I mean, if I may clarify, I think this is a concern that I've heard from many newcomers, whether students or new expats, that their experience, I think you also mentioned initially in the discussion that their experience overseas is not considered. I think that's a misconception that should be, settled. Uh, Experience is an experience, and every Australian organization considers your previous experience. It's just that trust level. How do how they can leverage your experience? And I always say, when overseas students come to Australia, they don't come just with their money bag in terms of fees. They also come with academic excellence that they bring from their country, be it India, be it China, the rigorous academic curriculum that they follow there. They bring that academic excellence to Australia. They bring their aspirations to Australia, aspirations to build a career path, to build a strong career in Australia. So I think if they have the right academics and right qualification and right experience, there is no difference between your experience in Australia versus your experience overseas.
Totally agree.
And if I can just also add to that, I mean, there's never been a better time from an employee perspective to promote themselves and their skill set, and whether it always stays that way, but with where unemployment is at the moment, organisations are obviously crying out for quality candidates. So if people have qualities, don't be afraid to promote yourself.
Yeah,
and I think
oh, go on, Luxman.
Sorry, just to build upon what Rob said, quality is important when you are studying and when you are looking for work. I think what employers are looking for, your rigor in terms of maintaining the quality of your career choice. So don't compromise on what you want to be. If you want to be an engineer, then stay focused on that and look for job in that area, and you'll probably have a better success. If you want to be an engineer and start doing part-time accounting job, probably you will have a bit of trouble from both sides, from your side as well as employer side.
Yep. A question I often get asked by internationals is, what's the startup scene like? Because a lot of them come here, they're quite entrepreneurial. They come from cultures where micro businesses tend to run communities. What's a startup culture like in Bendigo? Could be a good one for you, Rob.
I'm glad you asked, Dom. So Bendigo is part of a consortium, which is a fully funded program called Startup Central Vic. So that's actually in play now for the next few years. And there's an actual pre-accelerator program. I think their first cohort, there's about 40 places,
Wow.
which is kicking off in July. So if anyone wants to know any more about that, I can hopefully stick a link in the chat. But I've sent it through previously to Alan, so which hopefully she can share. But that's a great opportunity. So the short answer is, yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of activity in the startup space, and that's a really strong program. I've already been to a couple of those sessions with some entrepreneurs that have developed from just a basic idea into a global enterprise for some of them. So it's a really interesting area and a great one for me to learn as well. I mean, you're never too old to learn, of course. So if anyone wants to know more than happy to share information about that. But that's a really strong initiative that's currently in play.
And are there certain themes to in that pre-accelerator? Is it agriculture or?
Look, the theme is technology, but in terms of, I mean, the priority is to fill the places, and it's interesting, and it's not restricted. If somebody's already doing a similar type program elsewhere, they're not restricted to just doing that program. They can do multiple programs if it works in with their schedule. But the focus is around technology. However, the priority is to fill the places. So if we don't get technology focused people filling those, we'll look elsewhere.
Wonderful. And I really do encourage all students, international students, to get involved in a pre-accelerated program. For those of you who don't know, the pre-accelerated program are for people who are trying to validate an idea. So you've got an idea that you think would make a good business. And so you are surrounded by mentors and people who've been in business for a long time that will help you work out like the business plan, the business case, the revenues, costs, the marketing, all that type of thing. It's normally done over a period of time, over a couple of months or so, and then you get to pitch. Thanks, Sonia, for coming along. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. I've got to run,
Good on you.
guys. Take
Thanks.
care. Bye.
No worries. Thanks.
And Dom, if I can also just say that we're one of 6 consortium members. The lead member of that consortium is an organisation called Clear Dynamics, which is an artificial intelligence business, got give or take best part of 200 employees scattered all across the globe. So we're in somewhat pretty good hands in terms of the lead consortium member for that startup for entrepreneurs with a good idea.
And as an example, I ran a pre-accelerated program with La Trobe University, and it was for international students. And there was one group, 2 lovely young French ladies who were studying here, and they wanted to rid the world of plastic drinking straws. 5 years later, they now have their product called Little Green Panda in every single IGA store in Australia. So that's how far you can go. And I've probably got half a dozen different businesses that have now commercialized operations, and that's how they make their money. They don't have a job. They now work in their own startup. And so that's another alternative that young entrepreneurial students can engage in. And what a place to do it in Bendigo in one of these pre-accelerated programs. Wonderful. Well, I think we've reached the end. We've had a wonderful discussion. Sonia did let us know early on that she needed to go because she had another engagement she needed to get to. But thank you once again, Rob and Luxman, for joining us today and talking about how wonderful Bendigo is. I hope to get up there myself if I can convince my wife to leave the suburbs around Melbourne Airport. God knows why she wants to stay there. I really want to come up there and live there. I just love it up there. But thanks once again for joining us today. Thank you to the good folk at Study Melbourne and Career Catalyst, to my production crew, Penny and Alan, who are in the background, the little IMs. Unless anyone has anything they want to just finish up on, Rob or Luxman?
Dom, just to mention to you, we do have an airport in Bendigo in case you fancy living near airports. So, and we do have a golf course.
I'll let it know.
We do have a golf course near airport. So if you want a golf course in your backyard.
Terrific.
and dare I say it, it's probably the one thing for the first time I haven't heard for an hour or two. We've got a looming Commonwealth Games in 3 years' time, which to say we'll need all hands on deck in terms of workforce would be an understatement. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity.
Wonderful. And what are the sports that Bendigo is hosting?
Well, now you're testing me. So we've got squash, track cycling, 3-on-3 basketball, netball,
lawn bowls as well, I think.
And bowls.
And you might be doing cross country, the horses, the equestrian.
No. I think there's a few Paralympics as part of those sports as well. There might be 1 or 2 others, but I think they're pretty much all locked down now.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Well, thanks again, everyone. I really appreciate it. Again, thank you, Study Melbourne, and a big shout out to the wonderful service you provide internationals. Please go to the Study Melbourne website, look for those services. Everything they do is free, and they can be trusted with everything. So if you're having any issues, hit them up because they're here to help. So thanks again, everyone. Please enjoy the evening. St. Pat's Day tomorrow, the footy tonight, go the Blues, and we will see you in another Career Catalyst event shortly.
Thanks, everyone, and best wishes.